Here to go further in depth, we welcome in Matt Schlapp. Matt's chairman of the American Conservative Union, former deputy assistant political director for President George W. Bush, joining us from our Newsmax bureau in Washington. Matt, let's begin with your reaction to what the president had to say last night.
Well, I have to say, I'm still flabbergasted. I shouldn't be, because there was reporting that this would happen for weeks and months and before the election. But it's just audacious for a president to come out and tell the American voters, who literally just gave him a vote of no confidence, literally days ago, and tell them that he doesn't care what they think, that he's going to go ahead and do what he thinks. He's going to disregard the Constitution. He's going to disregard the doctrine of the separation of powers. He's obviously going to disregard the rule of law. He doesn't care at all about Congress. And he's going to do what he wants to do because it's in his political interest, I suppose, to do it. And I just think it's repulsive. And we're in a very bad place because of this.
Usually the president's rhetorical MO has been to blame George W. Bush. Last night, he singled your former boss out for praise. You served as political director for George W. Bush. Let me put the question to you squarely. Is what President Obama trying to do by executive order, is it no different from what your former boss did?
It's completely different. First of all, the thing that is the most obnoxious part about this is that you have a president of the United States basically taking the legislative powers, you know this, JD, you serve this, as if they're his executive powers. And that is obnoxious, and that is wrong. And by the way, there are liberals and conservatives, people across the political spectrum, who really think this is an irresponsible step. There are people who believe in having a bill go through Congress, an immigration reform bill fixing some of these problems, who also think this is a mistake, because I think you understand very well that this bold political action that he's taken, this power grab, really makes it very hard to ever get together on a legislative fix to some of these immigration questions. So no, I think it's much different. It's much more insulting. To compare yourself to Ronald Reagan like he did is just, it's a fabrication. Ronald Reagan gave status to people because of, in working with Congress, because there's a natural disaster, because there's a political disaster. This has nothing to do with any of those things. And to compare himself to those Republican leaders is just, once again, it's incorrect, it's fraudulent.
Well, that fraudulent representation has led to a whole lot of frustration up on Capitol Hill. Let's listen together to what Speaker Boehner had to say.
Instead of working together to fix our broken immigration system, the president says he's acting on his own. That's just not how our democracy works. The president had said before that he's not king and he's not an emperor, but he's sure acting like one. And he's doing it at a time when the American people want nothing more than for us to work together.
So, Matt, you heard Speaker Boehner there, but let's face it, there are different points of view among Republicans in the House and Senate. Indeed, the Senate passed what many of us regard as a de facto amnesty bill earlier this year. It is on hold in the House. We saw Eric Cantor lose his seat in a Virginia Republican primary as the Republican majority leader, a lot of it dealing with concerns about immigration. Has the president been clever here by catching Republicans perhaps frustrated but ultimately flat-footed because there is such dissension within the Republican ranks? Have about a minute to comment on that, Matt.
Yeah, I think you're right. He is doing this. Ultimately, this is being done for political reasons. And he thinks that if he acts now in the lame duck Congress, before there are more Republicans in the Senate and the House and a majority in both bodies, that he can catch them flat-footed. And here's the sad part. There's not a whole lot they can do. They can try to do something on the CR. They can try to do something through the budget process or the appropriations process. They can try to link this to something else the president wants. But the president is doing something that's very irresponsible and very non-bipartisan, and it has nothing to do with what the message of the voters several days ago. So I guess he's done the right thing politically. It's the wrong thing for the country.
Well, Matt Schlapp, we're going to ask you to stay in here with us. We're going to step aside for a break, and when we come back, we'll amplify more the options available to those serving in the House and Senate, and if any of those options should be pursued, given the fact that funding runs out for the government, I believe, in the second week of December. More with Matt Schlapp ahead. But in the meantime, do you agree with what Matt had to say? Why don't you tweet me your comments at Newsmax TV, hashtag America's Forum, and we're coming right back. Tonight, let's continue the conversation with Matt Schlapp, the chairman of the American Conservative Union, one-time political director for President George W. Bush. Matt, thanks for staying here with us. And let's return to a topic that you raised just before the break. You talked about the possibilities of action that could be taken. Mitch McConnell, in his floor statement yesterday, anticipating the president's action last night, said we're going to wait for new people to get here in January. Given what Ted Cruz described about this president engaged in unlawful and unconstitutional actions, shouldn't Republicans in the House and Senate try to do something, even in this lame duck session, to register their disdain and take action against this?
It's a great question, JD, and I think you know that they're all very upset about this. There are those who are just very upset about it because of the constitutional question, and then there are those who combo that with the fact that they know the politics of this are all bad for the Republicans. The downside is you've been through these battles. The downside is with a Democratic Senate, up until the new Senate is sworn in, there's very little they can do besides pass something out of the House, either a censure or a limitation of funds for those agencies that would enforce this executive order. Harry Reid will strip that out immediately as soon as it goes to the Senate, and obviously the president's not going to sign those things. So you get to an impasse very quickly. But I think you're right. I think at least the House has to stand up on its hind legs and say no. It's the House that has a conservative majority, and it ought to do that. But we just have to understand that as Republicans, we do respect the Constitution. And the Constitution allows for Harry Reid to strip it out and the president to veto it, and that's very unfortunate.
But there should be some action taken. Steve King of Iowa suggested the notion of a censure. A bill brought forth. Obviously, it's not binding, but it's not impeachment, but it would have the House go on record as very concerned and holding the president responsible. So even though it might be symbolic or cosmetic, it's still important to get done.
Well, let me give you another idea. You know this. We ought to be doing some we ought to have an aggressive, Henry Waxman-like, but conservative, oversight and investigation on every single way in which this decision was made, including any impact the new Attorney General decision has on this. What is the new Attorney General going to do if she's confirmed when it comes to this executive order? We ought to get all of this gummed up as quickly as we can. It's Congress's job to do that. And that could be the most effective thing that comes out of this. We have to stop the ability for Obama to implement some of these wacky ideas that he has in his last 2 years.
So you're saying get back to congressional oversight. The Constitution provides for it. The committees, that's obviously the regular order there. Let's return to something you have said in reaction to the president's speech. Some conservative websites, in fact, the website conservative.org, quotes you as saying that this president is showing, quote, utter contempt for the American voter. Utter contempt would indicate that is something that should be held in such revulsion that there does need to be some sort of reaction here.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, look, President Bush, I served in the first term of President George W. Bush, but he took what he called a shellacking in 2006. And, I think it's humbling. And you say the voters have sent a message. What is so strange to me is that this shellacking is a double shellacking compared to the 06 shellacking. And it seems like the president is going to do just the exact opposite, which is to say, yeah, some people voted on Tuesday, but a lot of people didn't vote. And people still think I'm pretty cool, and I'm going to do what I want. And to me, that is just completely repugnant. I mean, I have very strong political views. You have very strong political views. You go to the ballot box, you see how you do. Sometimes you lose. And you ought to listen to what the voters are telling you. And what the voters were saying was very clearly to Barack Obama, we've had enough. Stop. And what did he do? He turned around and he doubled down.
And because he has doubled down about 15 seconds, what does this portend for the next 2 years?
Well, in that statement that you read, the Democratic nominee in 2016, be it Hillary Clinton or whoever else, is now in the center of the bullseye. This is all going to be about Barack Obama in 2016, and that Democratic nominee is stuck to him. I think that is great for our side.
Well, as we know, one campaign gives way to another, and certainly 2016 is ahead. Matt Schlapp, promise us you'll come back, not wait till the campaign in 2016. Come back and visit with us real soon, okay?
It's a deal, sir.
Thank you. Matt Schlapp of the American Conservative Union.